Hi, it's the King Premier here, and this is a video vlog, talking about vaccinations. It's been a hot topic in discussions lately. It's in my news feed like crazy. It's people who say they don't want to talk about it end up talking about it. You know, it's an unavoidable discussion. It's all over the mainstream media. It's being pumped into our brains. So I figured, you know what? Screw it. Let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it. And in order to really talk about it, then we have to first figure out exactly how we're going to talk about it and what's the best way to talk about it. So that's why I've come up with these 3 ways in which we can talk about it. The first way is we can talk about it emotionally. We could talk about how we feel about people who do or do not get vaccines, or how we feel about ourselves and how we think about vaccines, and we can feel about, you know, how other people feel about how other people feel about how other people feel about vaccines. But that doesn't get us very far. You know, we can have that emotional discussion, but it's not going to accomplish very much other than a small gratification of feeling that we've said something, you know. And a lot of people are doing that. A lot of people need to do that, and I think that's great that they're doing that. Let's just remember, though, when those people do that, that's just what they're doing. They're just making themselves feel better. It doesn't really contribute anything to the reality of the situation, which is what I'm going to try to dig at here today with this video. We're emoting our feelings about vaccinations, but it's not a discussion. It's just an emotion, you know. And that's why in the realm of logic and reasoning, emotion is considered a fallacy, because it doesn't it expresses the truth of how one feels about the situation, but it doesn't actually reveal any truth about the situation. The second way in which we can talk about it is from a political or legal perspective.
What laws should we have about vaccines?
What are the legal ramifications of having or not having a vaccine? That's a discussion that I think we can work on in the political spectrum. But when we're talking about law, the problem is we're not focused on we're not focusing on the truth of the matter of vaccines. When we talk about law, we're talking about what's the truth of law. You know, what is the meaning or purpose of politics, you know? If your idea of the law and politics is that you should be subservient to the state at all costs, and if you're not, you're some kind of traitor or evil or bad person, I'm going to disagree with you on that every time. I don't care what the subject is. And believe me, people will pick the most horrible kind of, you know, situations where awful things, puppies are being murdered, you know, all sorts of things, like schools are on fire, you know, roads are just bursting into rubble right and left, you know, if we don't bow down before the state. And I'll just still disagree. I don't care. The moon could crash. The moon will crash into planet Earth. I don't care. I don't care if the moon crashes into planet Earth, if it means we have to live in a dictatorship in order to stop the moon from crashing into the Earth. I don't care. Let it crash into the Earth. That's my feelings on it. You know, I'll always err on the side of freedom and gladly err. But there's another way of legally looking at this too, and that's to talk about responsibility. And I think that's a good discussion to have But again, we're more talking about law than we are about vaccines. And so, if we want to talk about who is responsible for this tragedy of, 50 kids getting the measles in California or whatever it is, 60, I don't know. It's big picture. It's a lot less than the number of kids who get autism every year. We're not going to that's scientific. We'll get into that later, but just using it as number examples. And I'm not saying the vaccine's a cause in autism, but the number of people getting measles is obviously a lot lower than the number of people getting autism. I think we're all agreed on that fact. And so, then you have to talk about responsibility. Okay, if somebody gets the measles, whose fault is it that person got the measles? There's a lot of arguments you can have there. Is it the person who didn't get vaccinated? And then if it's a child, is it the parents who are responsible? If it's an adult, is the adult responsible? Was it somebody from the United States? Was it somebody from another country? What are the laws over in their other countries about vaccines? What is the availability of the vaccines? Do the vaccines cost money? Oh, I couldn't afford the vaccines. Oh, you couldn't afford the vaccines. It's not your fault. It's, capitalism. We need to raise the minimum wage. You can go around and around and around and around and around on all these legal ideas and arguments, but it doesn't get us any closer to really understanding vaccines. And the third way, which I think is the best way that we can talk about it, is scientifically. There's a lot of different ways to analyze science. The most popular way in which to analyze science is through the use of statistics. But of course, those statistics have to come from somewhere. There has to be research done. You have to have different groups and test cases, and it has to be peer reviewed. It has to be reproducible. There's a lot of elements that go into creating statistics. So there has been some bad data that sparked the initial debate about vaccines and whether they are linked to autism in any way. Those particular numbers, I think it's all been very much agreed upon that the method of reporting was not good. So there is that. We can look at that scientifically and say, okay, we tried to reproduce these results that this person, doctor, whatever, produced, and we were unable to do that through peer review when somebody else did the work. They got a different result. Are there ways in which that experiment could or should be modified? Is there different ways of looking at the data? Here's one way that we could possibly look at some data. Mainly seem to be comparing the current numbers of autism against older numbers of autism, and some of that might have to do with diagnosis, what's considered autism, what isn't considered autism, changes in definitions, better medical access to actually find out what's wrong with somebody. There's a lot of reasons why trying to compare current numbers with past numbers don't work. Population changes, all sorts of things. And so when we compare this old data to the new data, what we're seeing is trends. And that's exactly what both sides, vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, are looking at, is trends throughout time. Well, trends will always change throughout time. That's just part of what time does. Things change, things become different. We can't compare these trends that happen through our time-lapse data because these trends aren't necessarily related to each other. You could have a correlation that says, the price of gold is going up at the same rate in which the rate of autism is happening. Obviously, autism is making the price of gold go up. No, probably not. Probably not. We can't look at these correlations and say for certain that they mean anything. At best, it just gives us an idea of where to look. So instead of trying to look at these correlations through time and trends that are happening, instead, let's try to compare the now to the now. That way we can get our most accurate results and information about what's happening right now, which is the question. So one of the first things we might want to take a look at is the number of children who have not been vaccinated. We have a nice test group now because of this anti-vaxxer movement. This gives us a huge scientific opportunity to look at this group of people. Let's get a nice population sample of them, which we have well more than 100. You need 100 really to have a decent test of any kind, but bigger tends to be better, but it's harder to do cost wise. So let's get at least 100 of these anti-vaxxers who have chosen not to vaccinate their children, and let's sample them. Let's see if any of them have any of the symptoms of autism, and if they do, to what degree. How many of them have severe autism? How many of them have minor autism? How many of them don't have autism at all? This is really, really important information. We have an opportunity right now in order to figure that out, to see if there actually is a difference between, what would be a control group. This is absolutely what it is. It's a control group. It's a group that hasn't gone through, the vaccination process. They've just been kept au naturel. Well, let's find out. And if they have people, if they have children with autism, they didn't get the vaccines, there you go. We can find out if it's something else. And we can say, no, it's not these vaccines, because look, all this exact same number or more, or practically the same number, barely a difference, a significant, similarity here, that it doesn't matter if you get, a vaccine or not, your chances of getting autism are exactly the same. We have an opportunity to grab that data, and kids are going to get the measles anyway, apparently, because we can't stop them at this point. Might as well get some scientific data out of it. All right, that's the first thing we need to do. With the rate of autism today, if you test, 400 people, one of them should have a kid with autism. Just statistically speaking, it would be very bizarre if one of them didn't. But let's say that happens. Let's say that we find out that none of them have autism, or very few of them, or the symptoms are extremely mild in the non-vaxxer population. Then we need to reevaluate everything about vaccines. We need to look at how they're administered. Maybe we take some kids and we spread out their vaccines across more visits and use that as a test case. See if we get a difference there. We could, administer the vaccines later in their childhood lives, when they're a little older. Let's do that. If you administer the vaccines in different ways, then does it lower your chances of getting autism? And I'm not saying it does or doesn't. It might be just same, might have nothing to do with it. But it's through this testing process that we're going to be able to discover this information. There's a lot of things that we could talk about scientifically, and I think that would be great if we all had a discussion about those things too. This has just been meant to get the ball rolling so that we can actually start having a debate that's genuine, that's productive, that's constructive, and isn't ideological. Thank you, everybody, for listening to what I have to say. This is not fully comprehensive. This is just my off the top of my head thoughts. Feel free to keep the discussion going. I would love it if we could have talk about this scientifically and talk about, what is it we can do as scientists and human beings in order to make the change that we want in the world here. So please continue the discussion. Leave a comment in the video below if you're on YouTube or on Facebook. Or even if you're on the Modern Objectivist on Tumblr, my blog there, please feel free to say something, and I'll throw something back, and let's keep it going. Let's learn everything we can about this issue before we get too excited about it. So thank you again for listening to the video, and I look forward to hear what you have to say.